Zuhair is 21 years old and he's building a company that's literally automating attention on the internet. It's called Doublespeed, and they just raised $1 million from Andreessen Horowitz to build what is essentially a venture-backed AI content farm. But these aren't spam bots you're probably used to. Zuhair and his team are using real US devices and AI to create hyper-specific synthetic influencers, like a 62-year-old mom in Phoenix or a Gen Z skater in Atlanta that scroll, swipe, and post just like real humans. One of their clients used just 2 of these AI accounts to drive over 1 million views in a single week. The whole concept is honestly wild, and it's operating in this massive gray area where AI is completely outpacing everyone else. So in this podcast, Zuhair breaks down exactly how Doublespeed works and what his thoughts are around growth for the several companies he's had over time. We get into the mechanics of how this actually works, what people should be focusing on, and what this means for you, whether you're a founder, growth marketer, or creator. This is a fascinating look at the bleeding edge of AI and growth. All right, let's get into the pod. Zuhair, so great to be here with you. Walk us through what Doublespeed is.
Okay, yeah, loaded question. So Doublespeed is a synthetic creator, infrastructure, and basically what that means is we allow any company, any brand to deploy hundreds of AI agents to do their marketing on social media for them.
Okay, how did you get to this, where essentially you're getting AI, you're contributing to the dead internet theory?
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, couple different things, right? Like I think I've been in the AI content space for around like 4 or 5 years now. It obviously didn't start where we can make full-on videos using AI or even talking head videos using AI. That's actually only been like the last 6 months. But UGC has been around forever, right? And that's where I kind of started as a creator myself, and then I started a TikTok shop when TikTok shop released in like October, I think 2022. And I kind of just ran that up all with AI content, did 6 figures in the first month just with AI content, realized that that was the big place to go. And from there, it's just been, smooth scaling, right? I started an agency when I was at USC, just doing that, part-time with classes, all AI content. And then I did the same thing when I dropped out of USC to do this full-time for a startup in New York. And then left that to do, double speed, which is kind of taking all those systems that I built up and productizing it.
So just level setting. Is it fair to say you've been doing growth for a long time now?
Yeah, 100%. I'd say I really started when I was marketing for, stuff I sold online. Like I sold like Google Home Minis on like eBay, and I understood how to like SEO bot on eBay. I had like the #1 listing for PS5s when they came out on eBay as well. So that was like all like SEO stuff. And then I got really into like more organic when my dad launched a restaurant in Dallas when we moved to Dallas from New York. And that restaurant was sold out for the first 3 months. And that was all using, TikTok, Facebook groups, all that type of stuff. And that's kind of what opened my mind up to organic.
Okay, so in a way, your own experience of doing this inspired you to create what is now Doublespeed for other people to kind of do the same thing. Is that the logic of how your progress was so far?
Yeah, 100%. I think the other thing is reading the market and understanding that other people were looking for a solution similar to what I was doing, especially with the agency, especially with UGC, especially with the TikTok shop. Everyone wanted a solution like, I was running, and honestly it was really tough, right? Because I was running like 4 phones out of my own, apartment in New York. I was, posting every single day. I was making that content, hiring editors, hiring VAs, all that type of stuff. And I realized, if I put some dev talent behind this, we can automate a lot of these processes. And there's no reason that somebody should be paying like, 40K for a 30-person creator team anymore. When AI content exists.
And when you were doing this with your agency and really just as a growth operator, if you want to call it that way, were you seeing the level of results we see with, for example, human creators?
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? I think I've always been focused on making content that's not slop and that and knows how to convert, because like I said, I was doing this for my own brand to start. Right, so AI content could never be slop that doesn't convert for me, because that's like an ROI hit for myself, and I understand that for clients as well. That if we don't get them the conversions, if we don't get them the ROI, they're going to churn. Right, so the incentives are always aligned, and the content always needs to convert. What we do for that is like now we offer more of a managed service where we have humans in the loop. And that's all to bridge that gap, because there needs to be humans in the loop if you're going to convert on AI content, at least right now. However, what I've been seeing, right, 4 years ago, there was a lot more humans in the loop, right? And now, there's a lot more leverage with the guy orchestrating the entire agent swarm.
That makes sense. So, what do you think is the most important part for, let's say, someone's trying to grow a business, an app, or an Amazon store, whatever it is, with TikTok, with Shop, with all these kind of channels start booming right now? What do you think is the most important thing when thinking about growth from the organic or just overall? Because if it's not the actual creator for you, in your opinion, what is it?
It's the actual format. You need to make sure that the formats or the content strategy resonates with the end user. And sometimes that goes beyond just content. You also need to make sure that your product resonates, right? Like that's something that people, jump ahead of half the time, right? They don't even think about like, oh, is this product even good for TikTok? Is this product even good for Instagram? I would start there, right? If I was building a product today, I would start like, how do I see this product being advertised on TikTok or on Instagram, and then build backwards from there, right?
Mm.
Growth features are a big thing for that reason, and the best consumer apps, the best app like agencies or app studios right now are all focused on growth features plus the content, right? You need both things, right? There's no point of scaling content with creators or with AI until you have that down first, right? What's your basic level of understanding of how are we going to go viral today?
Okay. So, can you clarify, just for listeners who might not be as involved in this world as you are, as we are, what do
Yep.
you mean by format? So, what's a content format?
Yeah, so a content format is like a reusable, set of, hooks plus really an angle of content. And what an angle of content is like, what are you targeting? Right? Maybe it's an insecurity. Maybe you're targeting some like niche. Maybe you're targeting, 18-year-olds that go to a university in California and you have specific angles that hit them, right? Maybe it's for looks maxing, it's like a mogging angle, right? Like there's so many different angles like this, and like you're hitting different niches with each one, and each format is basically like an equation, is a formula, right? Of this hook plus this visual equals this return or this niche.
That's very interesting. And I think then, just piggybacking off of the format conversation, then that's where AI becomes really valuable. Because if you have this set of rules where you can scale a specific style of content, I'm imagining it's really just about then the quality standards. So it's not
Exactly.
quote unquote slop. Okay. How do you guys tackle it? How do you think about that with AI?
Yes, 100%. So if you have a repeatable format, if you have something, or if you have like the angles that will work, automating with AI is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do today, right? And that's how you get the highest ROI as well, right? So there's customers that hop on our platform and they're making all the content themselves. They know that this works with other creators. They buy like 10 accounts on our platform and they do 20 million views in a month, right? All doing repeatable formats, and that's until the meta changes on TikTok, obviously, right? There's obviously still like an iteration process, but the reason why the AI is so interesting here is because you can scale so fast and you can iterate so fast as well, right? Because before, you have to have, the creator coaches involved, which obviously they're telling everyone to use these hooks and they're telling everyone to use these visuals, whatever, but the iteration loop is slower on humans, right? When you're using AI, when you're using software, you can iterate way faster. And if you have that hosted account infrastructure that we do, you can also post that content, see if it does well, and then the next day you can have a whole different format to run.
And when you say there's a lot of things that then if you have set, then you can scale with AI. When
Exactly.
you were talking about building backwards from, TikTok, from growth all the way to the
Yeah.
product. When you said growth features, what do you mean by that? What are growth features in a product?
For sure. So a growth feature might be like, Astra had one that was really popular a while ago. They had a sketch your soulmate feature, right? So I think it's like based on your astrology plus like based on a picture of yourself, they'll sketch what your soulmate looks like. That is something that is a growth feature, right? Because that is instant content. They built that feature just for the content, right? No one actually cares, or like, maybe you think your soulmate's actually going to look like that, whatever, but it's a really shareable moment. Making
Mm.
those shareable visuals is probably the number one key to success on TikTok for any consumer app today.
And that's why you would start with the format or TikTok and then build backwards to the product.
Yes, exactly. Because if you have a strong visual hook, it just makes life so much easier. It makes it so much easier to actually plug your product into the content rather than like, forcing it in.
In a way, you're adding to the virality of the content with the product.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. And it makes,
And
the whole viral loop way easier.
that's very cool. So I want to ask you this about about double speed, but just in general, because you seem to have a very distinct perspective on this. When you talk about automating attention, when we talk about AI influencers or synthetic influencers, what does that actually mean? And how would that be different, for example, from, just traditional bot farms or influencer marketing on people who are still doing it traditional way? What do you see the main differences being?
Totally. I don't think of ourselves as a bot farm at all. I think of it more of like a movie production studio, right?
Hmm.
Because what we're doing at the end of the day is not something too dissimilar from the traditional UGC campaign, right?
Yeah.
Like I said before, a creator coach might set up a campaign with 50 creators, tell them all the same hooks, tell them all the same angles, all the same templates, whatever, and have to coach them every single day. And those are 50 different people marketing the exact same product with the same hooks, right? All we're doing is we're giving more leverage to that creator coach to scale this without using real, because in my experience, when I've managed real humans on stuff that I've done as an agency in the past, stuff I've done as contracts in the past, like humans really are horrible to manage, right? Especially because most of these campaigns are college kids, right? College kids don't post on time. They, if they feel like it, they just will stop making content. They don't follow the briefs half the time. They have homework, whatever, and like they'll make any excuse not to post or not to do stuff, right? And the iteration loops, like I was talking about before, are just extremely slow, right? So like the solution for me was always, if I can automate people out of the equation, I can have more control, because I know what content will do good. But if I rely on other people to create it, to post it, to warm up their own accounts, I'm always going to fall victim to their shortfalls, right? Obviously, there is more creativity that comes with having such a large team, and that's why I recommend a lot of bigger brands run the AI strategy and the creator strategy both at once.
Hmm.
However, when you're doing formats like slideshows or even like text on screen with just a video in the background, it just makes more sense to do it all with AI at this point, right?
Hmm.
If you have like actual creative formats that you need to run every single day, and you need like actual talking to the screen, then that makes sense to also run humans as well.
That was my next question. In which cases, let's say people are watching, they're trying to build or trying to
Yeah.
grow an app, a brand. In which cases does it make sense to still have the human creator team, in your opinion,
Yes.
versus just automating the kind of content formats? And I like what you said about the leverage is in the person that would otherwise be managing the creators. They now can essentially just have that whole thing with a lot more leverage. But in your opinion, where should you do the human campaigns versus the AI campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like, if brands have the budget for it, they should run both in parallel. Because then you take the learnings from the AI, you put into the humans, you take the learnings from the humans, you put into AI. It's an amazing loop. However, right, there's some certain circumstances where I'm like, I just don't think you should do AI content at all, right? Some physical products that are really hard to replicate with AI, for example, and if they're not willing to give us like images or video clips, then I'm like, oh, I think you should do a real creator. Or if it's something where they want to do less scale and more personal, then creator campaigns make sense as well, right? Where you're giving a narrative, you're giving a story. Every single video is this whole talking for like 2 minutes. That makes a lot more sense to go with actual human creator. Where AI makes a lot more sense is where you have a repeatable format that can scale up, right? And you have control on the iteration, you have leverage on your creativity, right? The thing
Hmm.
with AI content right now, especially with the Claude code workflows that I see people doing, the open claw stuff, whatever, is the like it's all about your imagination, right? You can cook anything up just by typing into Claude, and you can pretty much figure it out, right? People have these like remotion workflows plus FFmpeg plus whatever to create some insane visuals that will go viral every single time, and that's what they should be doing with AI content.
That's great. I mean, there's a lot to think about here. And I want to ask you, what do you think, or do you think AI is already at a level where, for example, it can compete with a creator talking to the camera, which is a difficult format to pull off.
Yeah.
But I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of interesting stuff there. Do you think we're there yet?
I don't think for Talking Head we're fully there yet. I'd say we see a lot of interesting demos on Twitter and Reddit and stuff, but I wouldn't go all in on there, right? As much as I like AI content, I also understand what's going to convert, what's going to do well. So I'm not super bullish on the Talking Head right now, but I do think maybe 3 6 months down the line we might as well be there.
I mean, it's the worst it will ever be right now.
Mhm.
So that's the
Exactly.
good news.
Exactly.
I think with AI content, I think what I think happens is I think people don't like to feel like they're being deceived. So it's like if it's AI content, but it's trying to sound human and it's failing, it's like that'll most likely flop because it's just like people. But I've seen obvious AI content. I'm sure you've seen it also,
Yep.
like formats where it's like obviously AI that rip because it's
Exactly.
like people know what they're watching.
Yep, yep. And that's doing super well on paid ads. That's doing well with, if you've seen like the AI pharmaceutical ones where like they're explaining something
Yeah.
about like serum or like some topical like skin things. Those formats do really well because people, like you said, they don't like the feeling of being deceived. So if you're gonna make it AI and it's clearly AI, then just go the entire, fully AI route.
All
Don't
the
even try
way.
to make it look like a human, right? If it's gonna talk and all that type of stuff. And that those formats are really working well, and we're doing those for a couple clients right now, and we're seeing kind of the same thing that you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's it. I think it's like staying on the fence is what kills a lot of these
Exactly.
campaigns. So doing all this, what did this teach you about algorithms, the social algorithms, the whole kind of social media scene? There's a lot of technical founders, even just growth marketers I talk to, that are still confused on how to interact on socials, how these algorithms work, how things work. Did this teach you anything specific on
Yeah.
that front?
Yeah, of course. And I'd say it taught me a lot about like social situations as well, right? I've been doing this pretty much forever since I was like 16 on the internet, in Discord chats, in, Instagram, set like, buying like pages, buying stories from meme pages, all that type of stuff to do different types of or like advertising. And, same thing with like the Facebook groups with the restaurant. And it really just teaches you about like consumer nature and psychology. And I think this is going like dated back to forever, right? Like it's the same exact playbooks. Marketing has always been like, the best marketing has always been inseparable from propaganda, right? And that's
Hmm.
exactly what's going on in these UGC campaigns is it's kind of a notion of like, everyone loves this product. Why haven't you bought it yet? Right? Why haven't you hopped on yet? Like why haven't you downloaded this app? And I think like that's just, taught me about like consumers, like, like you're saying, they don't like to be deceived. People like to be in the trend, like they like the feeling of knowing that they're the first movers. They're the
Hmm.
first movers. They're at the cutting edge, and they know something that they like. They know something that no one else does, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of the same reason why we've gotten so much traction even as a company because people feel that with us, right? When they sign with us, when they even book a demo with us, they're like, "Wow, what you guys are doing, no one else has found out about, right? No one else in my circle has known about, but this is so cool, I want to hop on." That's how you need to make customers feel. That's how you need to make viewers feel every single time. You need to give them that. Plus, you need to make shareable content. And shareable content is only going to be shareable when they think by sending this to my friend, I'm going to look cooler. I'm going to look smarter or I'm going to look funnier, right? It's like all playing towards like people's personal biases. What are they getting out of sharing your content? What are they getting out of commenting on your on your content? What are they getting out of, posting your content on their story? That's what you should go after. Is like, how is my content shareable? Why will people care about my content? Right? There's so many founders that just make content and people and they're like, oh yeah, this is gonna blow up. But like, no one cares. Why is anybody gonna care about this if you don't even care about it, right? If you're not associated with the company, you would never share this on your story, right? That's the way that you should think about making content.
So in a way, what you're saying, and this is one of the best takes I've heard so far. In a way, what you're saying is people that focus too much on learning the algorithm, hacking the algorithm, it's kind of useless. What you need to be focusing on is more understanding human psychology, consumer psychology, and you'll be ahead of any algo changes. That seems like what I'm hearing.
Yes, I'd say like algo is fine, but it all really boils down to human psychology, right? Like all TikTok cares about is retention. All Instagram cares about is like shares, right? It's kind of the same thing that I'm talking about. All you have to do is focus on, is my content shareable? Is my content viewable to where somebody is gonna, watch till the end? And you need to be very honest with yourself when you ask those questions. You can't just show the video to your mom and be like, "Oh, mom, would you watch this?" Right? That's not going to work, right? You need to be very honest about like, oh, if this video that I'm watching doesn't cut by 3 seconds and that hook doesn't like hook me in, will I continue watching this? The answer is probably no if your content's failing.
Yeah, this is honestly, yeah, one of the best takes I've heard so far on this. And I think I have the same opinion. I think it's like if you can be focused on like the little things and the tactics, and you can get lost in those tactics, but at the end of the day, it's just like, hey, Do you understand people want to watch, why they would share, why they would, comment,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and pretty much all of it is just that. So it's very interesting to think that. And I want to ask you about this. So there's a lot of people still doing like traditional brand ads, brand advertising, like these big campaigns. What do you
Yeah.
think is changing? Why did this, not only the AI, but the whole creator army strategy, why do you think all this has become so effective?
It's kind of what we were talking about earlier is like people don't like being sold to, right? When you see a sponsored ad on Instagram or you see like a sponsored post on TikTok, you know you're being sold something. So that's why people are, swiping away. And that's why when TikTok was launched and there's more organic presence of media, people are, putting ads into regular posts, which is like a whole different subject. But that's what it really comes down to is like people don't like being sold to, and that's why paid marketing is working less for some brands. But I also think paid is a great lever for most big brands, right? Like it's kind of like you get the top of funnel with the UGC, and then you convert them later on maybe with the paid with the retargeting, or you convert them later on with watching 7 UGC ads instead.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, yeah, I think a lot of it's what you said. You want to almost feel like you the best marketing is always like never feels like marketing. So you want to make sure that you get as close to that as possible with the channel and the formats you're choosing for whatever company you're trying to grow.
Totally.
And I
It's
think
all about how you make the viewer feel,
yeah.
right? Like as I was saying, like, why are they going to share this with their friends? They need to feel some sort of way. They need to feel like, if this is an info loaded UGC reel or short, they need to feel like, by sharing this to my friends, I'm going to appear like I'm smart and I'm tapped in and I have this knowledge, right?
Yeah.
I know about these peptides, like let me send this to my friends.
So let's get into some of the mechanics. How do you go from like a creative brief that you would otherwise send a creator to deploying hundreds of AI agents?
So there is a good amount of steps before coming to like actually deploying the content before deploying the creator. The first thing that we do when we get a client and they want to do like a managed service with us is we need to understand their niche, right? We actually have we built this thing in house where it's like an auto researcher because we have access to a couple thousand for you pages on these physical devices. We built an auto researcher that goes in, understands the niche, understands all the content, hashtags, popular music, all that type of stuff, just based off some keywords. And then we try to understand, like our content team tries to understand, is this a good fit for us? Because like you said, we don't take everyone on. We don't think that AI content is for everybody. It is working for a lot of brands, but it's not for everybody. And then we tell the client like, these are the types of formats that we think will work for you. And that's before any contract has been signed or anything, right? We send them examples, we send them formats like, this is what we would do for you. Are we aligned? And if we are aligned, then we take it to the next step of here's a brief, here's how many accounts that we think that we should do based on our research, all right? And once that is signed, then we go into like persona design, account warm up, making the content workflows, right? We don't design the content workflows first. We don't automate anything before we understand what formats will work. And then we go into like like I said, the content workflows. How are we going to make this at speed? How are we going to make this with the iteration? Which humans are going to be in loop? Right, we give them a whole campaign manager and they're responsible of deploying this content and then iterating on it very, very, very frequently. That's the best recipe, and obviously this as well with Plutus, is the iteration is everything, right? There's probably been very less scenarios where you post some content and the first week it goes crazy, right?
Yeah.
It takes week one, it takes week two, and you build up, you optimize, let it run for a bit, you see what are the comments talking about, what are the likes talking about, all that type of stuff, and then you iterate on that again, and that's probably when you're gonna get the breakout content. Is week two, week three, week four, all that type of stuff.
I want people who are listening to be able to apply this in a direct way. Which brands do you see this working the best for? What's it connected to? Is it with the needs or with the goals of a specific person or brand? And you talked about building backwards from the algorithm to the product. How can someone identify whether or not they would like this would be the right fit for them? Hey, I should be doing AI content. I should be doing UGC, whatever it is.
Yeah, the best clients that come to us and they know that they should rip some AI content is they are looking on TikTok every single day. They're seeing their competitors blow up. They're seeing their competitors' formats. They're seeing adjacent companies doing content at scale, and they're like, why are we not doing this? and then they come to us to scale it up with AI, and those have been our best campaigns to date. And we're taking those competitor, TikToks, we're taking those adjacent markets, all that type of stuff, iterating on that, adding our spin on that, and then blow them up like that.
Do you think you need to have adjacent companies or competitors start doing well to be able to make this work? Is there a
No,
way?
you definitely do not need competitors to do well. But I'd say understanding that every company is basically adjacent, right? You need to understand
Yeah.
that, somebody's doing something similar to you on TikTok, most likely, right? If you think that nobody is doing something similar or nobody has a brand similar to you, then probably your company shouldn't exist.
You haven't looked hard enough.
Yes, exactly. Exactly, right? There's always an adjacent niche.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is just a side note. One thing that I really like to do is, for example, on Shop, there's always a lot of products, new products blowing up, new creators blowing up. And those are people who are going viral and converting. So that's my biggest source of inspiration at all times. And the thing there is like none of those, for example, we work with apps, none of those are apps. All of those are obviously physical products. And the formats are transferable. Like,
Exactly.
do you,
Yeah, right. Like
how,
if it's health product, you can definitely take it and apply the same stuff to a health app, right? That's what I mean by adjacent markets. It's not like we're going to copy someone else's formats or we're going to copy someone else's videos. It's more of just like you need something to go off of, right? As a brand owner, right? So like when you come to us, that like those are the best brand owners that we know is like they've done the research beforehand.
Yeah, you've joked in the past about killing the internet, the dead internet theory.
Yeah.
Do you believe, rather, what's your opinion on the future we're heading towards? Do you think the most content will be AI generated on the internet or is already? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as content grows, there's a lot more AI being used in it, right? And that's all that's doing is unlocking human creativity, right? What I don't think will happen is that everybody's going to be watching low quality AI films or low quality AI content, right? Even if I was to push, 100,000 accounts today of low quality AI content, it would probably get 0 views. That's why the quality is something that matters and why we invest so heavily into our creative process, right? One of my North Stars right now is making like a self-learning AI agent that, creates autonomously, right? The reason that we're investing so heavily into that is because I understand that the quality of content matters so much and that we cannot post AI slop, right? That's why the humans in the loop are involved. That's why we are like, iterating on our prompts every single day. All that type of stuff is because AI slop won't work, but AI is here to stay. So it's really just, how can we give the most leverage to the orchestrator, the person that's, orchestrating all these accounts at once? Because AI is here to stay, but low quality is definitely not here, right? Any good quality content on TikTok, no matter if it's human created or AI, will do well. And you understand that, I understand that, and like what comes with that is also the understandings of human psychology of, who will watch this content and why will they share it? What are they going to feel when they watch this content? And that's, like you said, you don't want to deceive people. If you push out low quality content that tries to look human but actually looks AI, it'll never work, right? So it's really playing that fine line right now. But I think, in the future, AI content is definitely here to stay.
In a way, what I'm hearing here is almost reassuring for for founders, for marketers, for people who are big in the space. It's almost reassuring. It sounds like what you're saying is that although there's going to be the potential to create a lot more in a more automated way, the real thing that's going to make you perform or stand out is always going to be how good the thing is. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like nothing changes. It's just better
Yeah.
tools, but
Yep.
the everything else is the same.
Exactly. More automations, better tools, and it really just comes down to the vision, like the creativity, and that's why I'm saying like probably the highest paying job in a couple um, years for marketing will be the creator coaches. Will be these people that manage all these like these 30 guys, and now understand that and are going to apply that to AI.
Who do you think? So, a lot of the people who watch this are either technical founders, although they might be scaling, there's not much marketing experience behind it. But also in bigger brands, there's a lot of people who've specialized in like influencer management, etc. Where do you think the bets should be right now for the future? Whether that's for someone who's working a job and wants to become more valuable, or for a founder or founding team to scale faster. Where do you think the big bets are as far as hiring or developing into a new position?
Yeah, I think like I mean I'll tell you how I think about hiring right now, right? Because we hire for the creative director role of managing all these like these different brands and the content of different brands and prompts and all that type of stuff. And then we also hire for like more growth opportunities of our sales funnels and all that type of stuff. And what I'm looking for right now is people that are native to all these like automation workflows. Right, we use so much of like OpenClaw, Claude Code, all that type of stuff. We have our own MCP and double speed as well, and I think that's really the future is people that are creative with the ability to prompt and that are with the ability to even think up workflows, right? Even for right now, like on our back end for our CRM, there's like a plethora of opportunities that we have to automate stuff, right? And it really comes down to somebody coming in and understanding, what the context is, and then automating stuff based on their own creativity, right? So like all the power is given to the prompter.
So it's almost like you should bet on becoming or hiring people who are like human AI hybrids, right? That
Exactly.
can have more better output on their work.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. I think that's definitely here to stay, right? People that are leveraging AI, even if you're running a human creator campaign, there's so many different ways that you can leverage AI today to make that huge, right? You can leverage AI to understand, what hooks of your creators are working, all this type of stuff. You don't need to make AI content to leverage AI. There's so many
Yeah,
things that you can do today. Even what I was talking about with you like last week was on commenting, right? Seeding comments is a whole thing that like now that we provide it, like the best teams that I see making even real human content are using comments to increase their conversion. So the teams that are at the cutting edge are always going to be winning, right? That are like finding stuff out, that understand the alpha, but also aren't getting distracted because there's so many distractions out there. If you go on Twitter, they'll be like, "Oh, for your UGC, you need to do this, you need that,
100%.
whatever." Stick to the principles, but also be experimenting at all times.
I love that. And I want to ask you something because, and this might be a tricky question, but
Hmm.
look, man, you've grown an agency, you've grown products, you've grown brands, you've grown double speed. Like it doesn't seem to me that the skills behind all the growth are super specific. Because if they were, it'd be limited to one type of company or one space, or whether it's consumer or B2B. So with that being said, I want to ask you, what do you think is behind a growth mindset, like you being able to take something and regardless of what it is and just growing it, going to the next stage, scaling? Because a lot of what we talked about today is AI content, UGC, but like I'm talking to you and you've grown several companies, all of them different. Is there anything in common there that people can listen, take action on?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, the first thing I'll say is like I failed a bunch of times as well, right? It just all it really takes is the agency to start, right? A lot of people are waiting for permission. They're waiting for like, oh, YC needs to accept me before I start like working on my project or whatever. You don't need to like wait for permission, just like doing stuff, right? And then the rest is like I'm saying is don't get distracted. There's so many distractions in this world, like social media, Instagram, TikTok, like TikTok, Twitter. They'll all give you different advice on like if you have a company, like you should do this, you should be looking at this, whatever. Um, Make high conviction bets and stick to them. Make a couple high conviction bets and stick to them. Like that's all it really takes. Like even for double speed, there are so many people that are like AI content will never work, whatever. And we started with slideshows. Now AI video is there, all that type of stuff, and we've just stuck to that, right? And if we on the way we're like I don't think this is gonna work. I don't think this is gonna work, and we get like in this whole pessimistic mindset, we would have never been here today, right? So it's really just making those high conviction bets, sticking with it. And when it comes to anything, right? I've grown like e-commerce brands as well, and it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like, for marketing, what will work, right? For like, my cutting edge always for e-com was like design, right? I've always been very, very into design. Like, that's, the only differentiator that you have in e-commerce is like how your product looks. Anybody can replicate it in a day, right? Like this is like, how the app vibe coding stuff is going now as well. And it's just, taking those high conviction bets and, if I stick to this, it'll work somehow. If I keep on iterating, if I keep on optimizing, it'll work. And it's the same like workflow in content. Continuing to iterate and continuing to optimize funnels is always going to work, right? And then if it doesn't, then you have something really, really wrong.
How do you separate what is a distraction from what should be a bet?
I'd say I'm taking a lot of small bets, right? And I think like all founders are at once, right? There's so many like consumer app founders, for example, like they start out with small bets on our platform. They go into AI content for the first time on our platform, right? And that will get your toes wet or whatever, and it'll kind of give you learning and understanding of the space. But when I see campaigns work out best, they're like full into it. They know what they want. They go in with like the high budget right away, and they're like very very invested. They dedicate a full like team member to being in charge of their double speed strategy. So I think it's definitely a balance of understanding of like what is the 10x for my company, right? And what is like a small optimization, right? If you go on Twitter right now and you look up like some like UGC thing and it's like some vibe coded app, most likely it won't 10x your outcomes, right? The high conviction bets that you need to be taking is like what can 10x, what can 20x, what can 30x, and not the small stuff. The small optimizations you probably should just look past. And I think that's a mindset that took me a very, very long time to get to. And I didn't get to that mindset until I left school and I had a real job where the company was not worried about, the $100 or the $200. You have to get out of that scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah.
High conviction bets mean that, if it's not going to get me, 50,000 users in a week, then I don't do it at all, right? And that's a whole different mindset, because when you're building everything yourself and when you're bootstrapping like I was, since I was 16, I didn't have that mindset. I didn't understand that. I was like, even if I can get 5 users, it'll be awesome, right? And then my boss would tell me like, we don't care, like for, even 200 users in a day. Like we need to build the systems that will get us 50,000 consecutively,
Yeah.
week over week.
Yeah. So, in a way, what I think I'm hearing, which I resonate a lot with, is essentially you're saying, hey, work as hard as you can to figure out what opportunities exist to 10x, to 20x, like the highest leverage opportunities. Work as
Exactly.
hard as you can to figure out those. And then once you decide where you're going to deploy your effort, resources, follow through. So
Yep.
don't half-ass it, don't go
Exactly.
halfway. It's just like you were saying, hey, there's people who deploy a team member for it. There's people who start with super high, but that all to me signals that, hey, we've made a decision and we're following through. And
Yes,
then
exactly.
distractions be basically anything that comes in the way of finishing the bet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like even when you work with, bigger brands and when we do, I also understand how they think about stuff, right? They have a timeline. They understand like quarterly goals. They're like, we're not going to get into this type of content until Q3. And to me,
Yeah.
I respect that a lot, right? They know where they're headed. They know their bets that they're taking, and they're going to do a really big bet on AI content, for example, in quarter 3. That's perfect with me, right?
Yeah.
Versus a company that's like wishy-washy, that doesn't know what they're gonna do, whatever. And if they blow up here, then they're gonna invest in it. If they don't, they're gonna feel like they wasted some money. I like the companies that are willing to take the big bets, and I think that's what makes phenomenal companies as well.
So what do you think the mindset shift is for someone who's like in a growth stage or trying to grow as much as possible? They're probably stuck or hit the ceiling. What do you think the mindset shift is in practice for those people? Because I agree. I think the bigger brands, the bigger fish that have grown, that are past milestones, they're always like, they always know what they're doing now and they're all in that. And
Yes.
then the rest comes after. What do you
Yeah.
think the mindset shift is for the people who've hit the ceiling?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like I've always been like solo founding when I was like 16 to 20, right? So I never had that mindset of looking at like, the really, really big picture. It was always just a hustle, right? And the mindset shift really is, I mean, like I don't even think you should make that mindset shift actually, right? You need some sort of a scarcity mindset when you don't have the money, right? Because you're gonna run out, right? If you're too confident and if you're taking all these huge bets when you don't actually have any money, you'll be in a very bad situation, right? So that's why I kind of understand why, the San Francisco mindset of raising and all that type of stuff. I think it goes like way too overboard now. But I'd say like, if you are in a growth stage and you're just starting out, you need to be scrappy. And the way to be scrappy is figuring stuff out yourself, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're, a kid making an app right now, you probably should not be hiring 30 creators for it, right? You should be making
Going
content yourself
viral.
first. Yeah, you should
Exactly.
make content yourself first and then find those repeatable formats. Then maybe you do some AI stuff. Then maybe you do the creator stuff and you build up that way, right? So in that way, it's still a high conviction bet of I want to go viral on TikTok, but it's just about how you do it. right? And when you're at the start and when you're at the beginning, you need to be scrappy. The
Yeah.
arbitrage right now is being scrappy and using AI to your advantage, right? So if I'm an 18-year-old kid right now with an app, I am on Claude Code every single day. I have, probably 100 agents running because that's how I can outpace these huge companies. And for the
Yeah.
first time in history, that's possible because of AI.
This is insane. I love it. And I want to ask you something specific with socials. So like, do you have anything about like, because it seems to me that a lot of what you've done as well is like social media driven, even with growth for the companies you've had. Is there a thing or a list that you wish you've known from day one when you were starting? Like, hey, because a lot of people just struggle with the growth side of things. Like you can vibe
Yeah.
code an app and then
Yeah.
what?
And
So
then
it's like,
what?
is there something you wish you'd known from day one?
Um, I mean, on my side is like it's just start. Like what I wish I would have known is just don't wait for anybody's permission to start, right? You can make a second account right now, start posting content. For me, the reason I did AI content is because I just didn't want to like show my face on camera, and that's why I got into AI content, right? But if you are comfortable being a creator, if you're comfortable like showing your face, whatever, you'll be perfectly fine understanding everything by just starting and experimenting. People just
Yeah.
don't take that first step. Stop looking at all the Twitter threads, the Substack articles, whatever. Just post.
Go out there and post. I love it. What
Exactly.
and last question that's tactical, but this is actually something I'm interested in for your opinion. Like there's still brands that don't fully understand. Like, hey, why would we create page like new pages to be posting? Why not just pay a creator with a lot of followers? Like, what do you say to that? What insight do you have there?
I mean, I'm sure you get the same question all the time,
I
right?
do.
Um, I'd say like first of all, nowadays I get that question way less.
Yeah.
I'd say like this year, starting this year. Last year, that like that question would appear a lot more. But most brands understand the entire gameplay of you get a bunch of creators, they're all posting content, more shots on goal. TikTok cares less about followers nowadays. Even if you hire an influencer, you're gonna pay them like 5K. They might get 300 views. You never know. And then if you build a creator team, you actually have this ongoing workflow of a bunch of content going viral every single day, every single week, instead of just paying one influencer for one time, and you don't even own that content. You don't even own those accounts.
And why do you think TikTok and the platforms care less about followers? That's very interesting. Like, and that's one thing I'm also interested in for your opinion there.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like just psychology, right? They realized that shares matter a lot more, and that people are willing to watch new content, right? People are willing to watch stuff that other people have already validated, right? There's very less content on your For You page that shows up without like at least like 500 likes. And it's really just come down to their algorithm, and now like Instagram has put it in, and TikTok and Twitter has put that same like philosophy in it with like everyone doing For You pages. But I think when it came out in like 2020, it was very, very novel.
Yeah, no, it just revolutionized the whole thing. And I think it's like just thinking from a platform perspective, like if you were TikTok, why would you monopolize like the ability to get more people in the platform longer, like to get attention? Why would you just, you know, put that all on big follower pages or big influencers like shoulders? Why wouldn't you just judge every single piece of content individually, and if it's good, like it'll
Yeah.
retain more people in your platform? I think it's just like it's logic.
Exactly. No, it is logical, but before it was done, nobody even thought of that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? It's like they dissected why people are watching content, and then came out with that. And I think like the Instagram Explore page might have had that very, very early on, and TikTok just took the Explore page and made its own app,
For
and
you. Yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
it revolutionized everything.
Okay, yeah, no, this is amazing. And look, man, I really respect you guys are building. I think this is great. I think, yeah, AI is the worst it'll ever be right now. So whatever we're seeing right now with content is only going to get better over time and fast. So I'm super excited to see what you guys build next. And I wanted to ask Zuhair, for everyone watching, where can people follow you, follow your journey with double speed, um, get in touch and learn more? Where's the best place or the best places?
Totally. I think I need to do a better job of this, but mostly just find me on Twitter at Rare to Hair. You can see everything about double speed there. I probably should be writing more. I'll probably cook something up very soon.
You should. There's a lot of great insight, and so we'll drop your Twitter at in the bio, and appreciate the time. There, it's great as always.
Of course, of course. Thanks for having me.